So let's give a great McDonald's welcome to Kristin Lindeen.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Every good, effective leader begins with the disciplining of his or her thoughts. And that's why we give leadership that definition. It begins with our thinking. And when we leaders are able to discipline our thoughts, whether it's at work or at home or in the community, we're able to practice a marvelous idea called personal accountability. Personal accountability, that is the core message of QBQ Inc. That's the only thing we train on, not because other trainings are not important, but because we believe that personal accountability is the foundation from which all other trainings can be built. And that's what I'm here to share with you today, is this idea called the question behind the question. The purpose of this session today is to identify the lousy questions in our lives and begin to remove them, to recognize the danger that they present, and to instead learn how to replace those questions with better questions. And the QBQ is just always a better question. We have to get rid of blame if we want to live an accountable lifestyle. So questions that begin with who and have a whodunit tone that point the finger, we got to get those out of our lives. So those are the three traps. Questions that begin with why lead us to victim thinking. Questions that begin with when lead us to procrastination. And questions that begin with who lead us to blame. So the QBQ helps us eliminate three traps, and the first one is right there on your sheet. Questions that begin with why lead me to victim thinking. That's the V word on your sheet. Victim thinking. Questions like, why is this happening to me? Why doesn't anyone understand me? Why can't we get good people? Why is life so unfair? Questions like this lead us to victim thinking because they begin with why and they have a poor me tone. I'm throwing myself a little pity party when I ask these questions all day. And I'm guilty. I am a whiner. Do I have any whiners in the room with me? Yeah, loud and proud. Oh, we've got some finger pointing over here. Dorothy works at Chick-fil-A, and I know they're based here in Atlanta, but how many of you have Chick-fil-A's where you come from? So Catherine had to very quickly gather up all her things and throw out her trash. She raced her friends to the bus, and it wasn't until they were a little ways down the highway that Catherine realized what she'd done. She couldn't believe she had done it again. She did not want to call her mom and tell her what had happened. Does anyone have a guess for me? Retainer. See, I see you've all been there. How many of you would offer to dig through fast food trash for some girl's retainer? Okay, there's always like 3 people in the room. You're amazing, because I would not do that. Now, she could have asked questions like, who put me on this shift? Why did I have to answer the phone when this lady called in? And of course, when are those teenagers going to keep their retainers in their mouths, right? But instead, I don't know Dorothy, but I can assume she asked questions like, how can I contribute? How can I go the extra mile for this customer? Personal accountability, it's just as simple as asking, what can I do to serve them and help them reach their goals? A couple things about this handout that I'd like to share with you briefly. 3 things, in fact. One, that makes it unique is we're actually going to use it. How many of you have been to trainings where you get a binder full of information and you never refer back to it again? But what you have here when you leave, if you choose to engage with me and fill in the blanks, is you'll have a wonderful tool for repeating the content. Because repetition is the motor of learning. Did you know that? Repetition is the motor of learning. Did you know that? Repetition is are we catching on over here? All right, so repetition is the motor of learning. So fill this out with me here today and then tack it on your wall in your office or on the fridge at home and come back to this content. Second thing that makes this handout unique, it is bright yellow. How quickly do you think you would lose it if it were white? Pretty quickly. So we do make it bright yellow for a reason. FedEx office calls this Liftoff Lemon. I thought that was a great color title for you all, blasting off to new heights of productivity and success, right? 6 of you think so. When am I going to have more tools to do my job? When am I going to get the resources I need to succeed? Those 2 questions are very externally focused. Instead, we want to ask the QBQ below, what can I do to achieve with the resources I already have? You know, we define creativity as succeeding within the box. Some of you may have heard of thinking outside the box. That's being creative. Let's think outside the box and dream big. It's great to dream. But at the end of the day, we all have a box that we've been given. And not many of us have the authority to reach outside that box and get more resources, more products, different products, more people. We don't always have control over those things. So instead of sitting inside that box and saying, why don't I have a bigger box? When is someone going to get me more tools inside my box? Who moved my box? Instead of sitting inside the box whining and blaming and procrastinating, we just want to say, all right, here's my box. What can I do to achieve with the resources that I have inside my box? It's a great question, and it's a great way to get creative on the job and get things done and be exceptional in our roles at work. We were taking a Sunday afternoon family drive, and we're driving down a fairly busy road, and this large open field that had nothing in it off to the side of the road caught our attention that day. And it caught our attention because it was absolutely littered in newspapers. And then we noticed something else. This man tumbled out of his wheelchair and starts dragging himself like this across the field, clutching newspapers to his chest as he went. So all of us kids, almost in unison, yelled out, "Mom, Dad, we have to pull over, we have to help." So Mom and Dad parked the car and we got out, and us Miller kids ran across the field, literally plucking newspapers from the sky. We thought it was fun. So we cleaned up the whole mess, and then we gathered around this man and we helped him back into his wheelchair, and of course we asked him what happened. Turns out his name was Brian, and he'd been in a car accident a few years back and had lost his ability to walk. But he could drive, and so his job was delivering newspapers. Now, he'd gotten home that day and realized that a bundle of newspapers had fallen out of the back of his pickup truck. And in what I believe is an incredible act of accountability, he went out to look for the missing newspapers. So my dad looked at him and he said, "Brian, I don't understand. What were you going to do? Were you going to clean them all up yourself?" And Brian kind of looked at my dad as if maybe my dad's a little slow. Brian looks at him and very respectfully says, "Well, of course. I couldn't just leave them there. It's my mess." Is that a statement of accountability or what? It's my mess. Now we can apply that statement to our lives as well. My department is not as productive as it could be. It's my mess. My relationships, they really aren't what I want them to be. It's my mess. My team isn't gelling the way I wish it would. It's my mess. My life isn't turning out the way I thought it would. It's my mess. Saying it's my mess is just another way of saying I own it. I own the results of my department. I own my relationships. I own the success of my team. I own the path and the direction of my life, and if I don't like the way my life is going, it's up to me to change it. Saying it's my mess is just another way of taking ownership, and that's personal accountability. Even if the mess in front of me is not fully my fault, saying I own it, what can I do to contribute? That's personal accountability. It's really just as simple as that.